Welcome back in. Appreciate all of you hanging out with us. We roll through the third hour of the show, breaking down everything in the world of sports and beyond. We are joined now by Will Cain, as we are scheduled to be in the near future. Appreciate him being flexible with us. I want you to know we're here in the Outkick studios, and that Discover matches all the cash back you earn on your credit card at the end of your first year. It's amazing because Discover's accepted at 99% of the places in the U.S. that take credit cards. Learn more at discover.com/yes. 2021 Nielsen Report. Limitations apply. No limitations, however, apply when we get to visit with Will Cain. Will, I got to hang out with you over the weekend, be on your new show, Fox and Friends, and we were reacting to a story that I feel like has legitimately changed the trajectory of how we talk about sports, because for many people it was a sort of come to Jesus kind of moment where you're like, hey, this isn't possible to avoid anymore, and that is the intense political nature of our modern day sports. And of course, I'm talking about the decision to pull the All-Star game out of Atlanta and put it into Denver instead. This decision came down on Friday, right as everybody was rolling into the weekend. People are still reacting to it days later. Were you surprised by the decision of Commissioner Rob Manfred, or did you anticipate a decision like this being made?
You talking about, am I surprised he put it in Colorado, or that he just yanked it from Georgia?
That he yanked it from Georgia in the first place. Were you surprised that he made it? Because several days we had the discussion of Joe Biden, the president, said it needed to happen. The Players Association head said it needed to happen. But it kind of, I think, was on the back burner. I don't think most people anticipated that Rob Manfred was going to make that decision. Did you, or did it surprise you?
So I guess I'm surprised that, and you and I've had this conversation, but that so many different companies and CEOs are proving to be so spineless. But I'm starting to get used to that, right? Like I saw the NBA bend to the transgender bathroom bill in North Carolina. I saw various companies do every woke messaging they could through the spring of 2020. So I knew that corporate CEOs were generally spineless. What I guess surprised me in this particular decision, Clay, is you and I, and honestly, anyone who's willing to look an inch deep and be real about this situation, know all the criticisms of the Georgia bill were complete BS. It was just lies upon lies upon lies about what that bill was. So if there's any surprise that I have, it's that Manfred was willing to live in this universe of lies and in turn make a reality out of it. So in other words, lies win the day, lies dictate reality, and baseball is willing to live in this universe of lies.
So there are a lot of people out there listening to us right now that are still upset about the decision, and they're wondering, they may be Major League Baseball fans, they may be casual sports fans who were just excited that we're starting to get back to some form of normalcy, and we'll get to the Texas Rangers here in a moment. What would you tell those people to do? And before I get your opinion, I'll say what I decided to do. I feel like the Atlanta Braves are not to blame here. So my 10-year-old is a huge Atlanta Braves fan. I had promised him that we were going to go down and watch a series at some point during the season because they're going to have fans present. Last year for his birthday, he wanted to go down. There's a hotel where you can look into the stadium from because they couldn't have fans. So we got a hotel room there. We took a family trip down, and we watched the game from the hotel room, which was kind of a crazy environment. But that's the option that we had last year. This year I said, hey, you want to go to a series, we'll go down. I also understand that some people out there are like, I'm done with baseball. I'm not going to watch. I'm not going to spend my money. What would you tell people who are upset to do in response to this decision?
Okay, I'm excited to hear what you said and what you teased you chose to do. But here's where I am. First of all, I was quasi-boycotting baseball anyway, just because I'm not that into it anymore. I mean, but I think I'm just like every other sports fan. I watch the Texas Rangers, by the way, when they're good, and I don't really watch any other national team, whether that may be the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Dodgers. I don't World Series time, playoff time, then maybe I tune in. But there's nothing for me to boycott right now, really. But were you a baseball fan?
Were you a baseball fan growing up? Because I was until the strike, and they didn't play the World Series, and I was right around 15 years old then. And, that's kind of the moment when suddenly you have other options, right? When I was a kid growing up and I'm home by myself in the summer, I'm watching a lot of Cubs. I'm watching a lot of Braves. I thought it was cool to be able to stay up and watch a West Coast baseball game growing up in Nashville. And so I was a huge baseball fan growing up. I've come back to it now through my kids. When did you fade away from baseball?
I was a baseball fan. It would probably have always been number 3 on my pecking order after football and basketball. But it was strictly tied to whether or not the team I cared about, Texas Rangers, were any good. It was very, very – it fluctuated based upon how good the team I cared about is. Whereas football, look, and I think we're the same on this, college, pro, I don't care, I'm in, right?
Yep.
But basketball is somewhere between the two where I need the Mavericks to be good somewhat, but I don't completely tune out if they're not good. But let me go back to what do we do? What do we do about this? And because I want to hear from you as well on this. So at my core, Clay, I think I'm a dude. Like, yes, I do have political beliefs, and I definitely have deeply held, passionate values that I believe not just in what it means to be an American, but what it means to be a man and what it means to be a good, upstanding citizen of the United States. I hold these things very deep. But I don't think of myself as, like, insanely political. So you say to me, hey, Will, you're going to give up sports? Like, some of my friends at Fox News are like, come on, you got a boy. I'm like, easy for you to say. I love this stuff.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
I'm like, this is who I am. I'm a dude that likes sports and by the way, I don't think you're really going to give up Delta and Coca-Cola. I don't think Donald Trump's going to quit drinking Diet Coke.
I also, by the way, don't want to have to think about that when I book an airplane flight. I just want to go the fastest way to whatever city there is. I don't want to be like, well, I was going to fly Delta, but then their CEO said X, and now I'm going to fly Y, even though I don't like – I just want to get on whatever the plane is that gets me where I want to go the fastest and the most affordable, right? And so I don't want to think about all that.
And that makes us like everybody else. However, and this is going to lead me to the question of what did you do? However, I do think there's been a complete cultural takeover by one radical ideology, and it bothers me to my core. And when I look at these companies adopt this crap that does undercut not just my politics, but my values, I want to do something, man. And I don't know what it is. Because, honestly, boycotts aren't feasible. Like, I fly to New York every week, and my wife helps me book my tickets, and she's like, you want to fly American or Delta? And I'm like, to the point you were just making, I'm like, well, I guess American. And then she's like, well, the Delta one's cheaper and at a better time. I'm like, let's do Delta.
Yeah, right. Yeah. And I think that's the way the vast majority of people think. So my thing is, I'm going to pay attention to the Atlanta Braves because, to their credit, the Braves basically fired back at Rob Manfred's decision. And I know enough people who work around that organization to know that they were furious over the decision. And it doesn't feel fair to me to punish the Braves personally with, and look, I'm not pretending that like I'm spending tens of thousands of dollars a year with the Atlanta Braves, but like many people who are listening to us, I'm a dad, I've got a family, and we would go sit in the stands, and I would buy a couple of beers, and I would buy a lot of hot dogs and some ice cream and probably souvenirs, and that's money that I could choose to spend on another entertainment product, but instead I'm going to go ahead and go to the Braves. But what I have decided is a lot of times when we travel, like I've been to Coors Field. We go to Denver. I'm like, I'd like to go watch a game at Coors Field. We went to Seattle, and I was like, hey, I'd like to go watch a game.
Right.
I'd like to watch the Mariners play. Like, that's a casual thing that you might do. If you're in New York City, you might go to Yankee Stadium or you might catch a Mets game. Or if you're in Boston, you might go catch a Red Sox game. This year, I'm not doing that. I'm not in the event that we are, for some reason, in a casual town. I don't think that I'm going to choose to just spend money on a random, day to go to a game. I'm still going to take my 10-year-old to go watch the Braves. That's a small thing, but it's otherwise money that I would have spent probably at some point this year for another team. I'm just not going to do it.
Yeah, why give your money? The weird thing about this is, Delta or Coke or Major League Baseball are telling themselves, well, we're not taking a political stand. We believe in essentially the foundation of democracy, voter. You believe in a bunch of BS lies that radical ideologists sold you. So in the end, what you're telling me is you hate me. And so why am I going to give money to somebody that hates me? But I just don't know. I don't know, Clay. I don't know if the boycott ever is effective. I think the only other thing you can do is attack it through politics, like have Republican politicians say, look, no more antitrust protection for Major League Baseball, no more tax breaks for these big airlines that get subsidized to the nth degree. And you can attack it that way. But in the end, I'm sorry. All I know is we have to do something. I don't know what the answer is.
It reminds me of my dad. I used to, whenever like a new restaurant would open or some new company, and we would go there, and I'd be like, how do you think this restaurant's going to do? Or how do you think this company's going to do? And he'd be like, well, they got 20 of our dollars. Like, that was always his response, right? And I'm with you in many ways that I'm not a big, hey, let's organize a massive boycott, right? It takes a lot of energy and effort. And I think oftentimes you're advertising the product, and boycotts actually often help because it just makes people aware. As you well know, there were probably tons of people who listened to your show because people were like, we can't have Will Cain on the radio. And there's a ton of people listening to me right now who are like, I can't believe Clay Travis has a radio show. Because really, I always say all publicity is good publicity unless you're facing jail time. And so I think, if you make people like legitimately think about a product or think about an idea, that it actually works to their favor. So, but I do think on an individual basis, people can make their own decisions.
Speaking of hate listening and hate watching, I saw not that this is hate watching. I saw you with my buddy last night, Pete Hegseth, on Fox News, and he said to you, you called sports writers boneheads, or I don't know what adjective you chose. It wasn't friendly. Yeah. And Pete said, "Well, your phone's probably blowing up. All your sports writer friends that are mad at you." And I was like, "What are you talking about? Clay doesn't have any friends in sports media." Which, by the way, is a joke. I know you do.
It is.
Your friends are the same as my friends. They quietly text me, right? But
that's right.
They tell me that I'm right.
The number of people that, when we had our woke bracket challenge on Outkick, sent me text messages and said, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever," but I would never admit to the fact that I love it because it would impact my overall career trajectory. And it is funny. I mean, I'm all for people having opinions, but the idea that you would trust sports writers to analyze voting rights bills and have a cogent and succinct and intelligent opinion of those. I mean, oftentimes, as you well know, sports writers are overwhelmed when it comes to, like, hey, who should the San Francisco 49ers draft at 3? Like, coming up with a rational take on that is difficult for them. I really don't think they're going to analyze the respective voting platforms of 50 different states and determine whether or not they have constitutional viability or anything else. So I do think a lot of fans,
and yet somehow, Clay, oddly, they all end up with the exact same opinion.
Yes.
And the same level of condescension for anyone dare question their conclusion. It's fascinating.
It is amazing. I mean, we don't really have a fair marketplace of ideas in the world of sports media. And I've said this for a while. If Outkick didn't exist, I don't know that there would be anyone even arguing the things that sometimes we argue at Outkick, right? I mean, it's wild because, you can almost say that about, for instance, the Wall Street Journal right now. I love reading the Wall Street Journal editorial page. If the Wall Street Journal didn't exist, I really think that the opinions that are in the Wall Street Journal wouldn't be distributed anywhere, right? I mean, you can say, like, oh, if the New York Times didn't exist, well, the Washington Post and the New York Times editorial pages at this point are basically indistinguishable, right? There's lots of versions of that. There really isn't any version, for instance, of the Wall Street Journal.
No. Look,
and you guys at Fox News, if Rupert Murdoch
did not exist,
if Rupert Murdoch didn't exist, there would legitimately not be any avenue for contrary to mainstream left-wing political thought to exist in the country anywhere. And it's wild to think one guy and his family.
And yet Fox News does exist, and that singular voice in the world of cable news draws the ire of the absolute, solidified lockstep group of the rest of media. Like they're Brian Stelter on CNN, the Daily Beast, you name your organization, Vox. Their daily existence is to somehow silence the one voice of dissent.
That's right.
Fox. And you're the same way in sports. I was when I was at ESPN.
Yeah.
Nobody was more the target of, can you believe he said XYZ, than me at ESPN. And you,
that's right.
And the sports media at large. So the fact that one single voice exists of dissent cannot be tolerated.
It is wild to think about. You're a Texas guy. Let's run into some quick sports analysis here. Baylor won the national championship. Was that stunning to you as a Texas guy, like that Baylor just kind of came out of nowhere with Scott Drew in the last 18 or so years and suddenly ascends to the college basketball champ. Like the idea, you're a University of Texas guy. The idea that Baylor would win a national championship, like if we had been having a beer back in 2003 when they hired Scott Drew, and I've been like, I think this guy Scott Drew is going to win a national championship at Baylor. What odds would you have given me on that happening?
So you're a little bit younger than me, but when I was growing up, Baylor was the laughing stock.
Yeah.
It didn't matter the sport. Like you're like,
Yep.
oh, Baylor, that stinks for you. They're a doormat. And actually, I was thinking about this, and I'm going to do this on the Will Cain podcast, which, by the way, is rocketing up the charts. I hope all your listeners go to Apple or
encourage you to go
Spotify
find it.
Please do. And I was thinking about who the most tortured fan base is, because Baylor fans just never – they were never any good. And the minute they did get good, like one basketball player murdered another one. You know, like
it is an unbelievable story.
Or Art Briles. You know, they got good at football, and then Art Briles comes along, and they have that scandal. And you and I, by the way, both talked about that scandal and what it is and what it is not. But the point is, the minute you were great, they were dragged back down by scandal. So to see Baylor win the national championship, it's just like, what redemption for a fan base. And I was trying to think, what other fan bases have – I mean, Vanderbilt, clearly, where you went, is I mean, that's a tortured fan base. And I was thinking, you've got to be in the Power Five.
Yeah.
What Power Five conference teams, not teams, universities, because I want to go beyond just football, just every year you suit up and you got nothing to root for. And I was like, Baylor used to be that program. Now look at them. They're national champions.
Yeah, it's a fun debate. I mean, to actually think about what is the most tortured college athletic program in a Power 5 conference. And
the Mississippi schools, right? The Mississippi schools are pretty tortured.
Yeah, they've had
a
tough spot. I think it's also that you're surrounded by incredible success, and you typically haven't had very much yourself. The Mississippi schools in the SEC, I would say like Iowa State, as you well know, in the Big 12. It's like, I know they've had a decent basketball team occasionally, but they haven't won a football conference championship since like 1915 or whatever it was, forever ago. They got to play in the Big 12 title game. You can
at least Vanderbilt and Northwestern, at least they have the excuse of, well, we're academically focused.
Yeah,
So
Vanderbilt now has the number one baseball team in America, so they've at least of late, Tim Corbin has done such an incredible job there. They won 2 national championships with him. I think they're the number one team in the country in baseball right now, so they at least have that to hang their hat on. They've been to a couple of Sweet 16s in basketball, and Memorial Gym used to be kind of great. Football, James Franklin won 9 games 2 years in a row, about a decade ago, which was an incredible accomplishment for them. Rutgers is pretty much always awful. I think that would be one you could point to. A lot of people still don't think they're a Big Ten school, but they're there. NC State won with Valvano in '83, but I think in the state of North Carolina, they're surrounded by a lot of success, and they've never really been at the same level. It is a fun discussion.
By the way, Rutgers, I know you want to switch real quick. Rutgers is a fascinating analysis for me as well. We used to talk about this on the Will Cain Show. You and I, you're Tennessee, I'm Texas. Your big state college, that's who's good if you have a recruiting base. The New York, New Jersey area, Pennsylvania, they have recruits for football I'm talking about right now, and yet none of them choose to go to the big state school in New Jersey. Rutgers, you would think, at some point could be good at football, but no, all those guys from the Northeast, they go somewhere else to play football.
You would think also Boston College, because that's a really good school. And to your point, it's basically Syracuse. There's basically no competition in that, region around the area, but they just can't ever convince the top players to stay home, which is obviously what they're trying to do with Schiano right now. Do you think – so we started off the show talking about this because I think it's a monster, really interesting, fascinating question. There is talk that the United States might boycott Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics. State Department said they are considering it. Right move, wrong move, or are you still uncertain in what you think the United States should do, obviously with the tension with China and COVID and everything else?
Okay, so I don't have a locked down, hammered, ready to hammer opinion with you right now, so let's sound it out together. Back to what we started the conversation with. I don't like boycotts in general. It's not my thing. Number 2, I like the Olympics more than most other sports fans because I grew up playing an Olympic sport. I swam, and then I played water polo. So the Olympics were like the Super Bowl for anybody that did sport that didn't have a professional league. So I always tuned in. Barcelona, London, didn't matter. I was tuned in. And I just know that the people that ultimately pay that price are the athletes that have been training for 4 years for that opportunity. So I hate that for those for those people. Do I want to patronize China? No. Do I think it makes my stomach turn that you sit here and you tell me Georgia's bad, but China's good, or North Carolina's bad, but China's good?
Yep.
Yeah, whatever. Even if not good, they're okay. Yeah, it kills me. But I do not. I mean, I don't like the idea of boycotting. I mean, I think about, what was it? Soviets boycotted in 84. We boycotted in
80.
No, Soviets 80.
We boycotted Russia in 80 because I think Mary Lou Retton won the gold medal, if I'm not mistaken, in 84 because the Russians who were so good at gymnastics were not here. I think Dub, look that up, but I think the 84 Olympics were here. Were they in L.A.?
Soviets were not. It was in L.A., and the Soviets did not come. I'm trying to remember which one we boycotted.
I think we boycotted 80 in Moscow, if I'm not mistaken. Dub, you can let us know if we butchered that or not, but I think we got it right. Well, so here's my idea. Here's what I started the show with. We basically, and Canada, for the most part, dominate in the Winter Olympics, right? A lot of those Winter Olympic sports feel like things that we just invented, the snowboarding, all the different categories that we dominate. I don't know why we couldn't put on our own version of the Winter Olympics in the United States, maybe in Canada as well. Maybe you go up to Vancouver and right across the borderline there, assuming that by 2022 everything is back to normal. That way we don't actually miss the kids, getting an opportunity. I say kids, people who are tending to be young, certainly snowboarders, they're like all, 16, 17, 18 years old, it feels like. And that way, to me, you don't take that away from them. But I have a big problem with the idea that we're suddenly going to show up in Beijing in 2022 and, accept the fact that they are hosting the world after the way they unleashed COVID and lied to everybody and what's going on with the Uyghurs and what's going on in their country in general with genocide. I just don't think as a country we can show up and basically in some way nod towards their legitimacy.
I think I can't tell you you're wrong. And ultimately, once I sit down and give this my full undivided, let's figure out where you are on this, Will, I might end up in the same place as you. I think if we expand this upon beyond the Olympics, I would imagine over the next couple of years, my job is going to center around China a lot, talking news, talking politics. We're going to have to figure out how we're going to handle China because this is the global threat. This is our nemesis. It may not be traditional warfare, but it's happening in every other way. And we're going to have to come up with a real strategy because they have one. And people have told me that in the news. People I've interviewed. This started a long time ago. They saw that they couldn't defeat the United States in a traditional war, and they started waging non-traditional asymmetrical warfare, information warfare a long time ago. And we're going to start figuring out what our strategy is with China.
They have a 100-year plan to beat our asses, and we don't even know we're getting punched every day, is the analogy that I make. We're so busy, and by the way, they are fomenting it. We're so busy yelling at each other in America that we don't understand we're getting punched in the back of the head by China every single day. They are stronger when we are divided, and that's why I think to a large extent they are manipulating much of social media, which they don't allow, by the way, to exist in their country for this reason, to make us all hate each other internally in the United States. They're using our sports as a platform to do that. And most people in America, I really believe, have not recognized what's going on. And in the meantime, they're dragging down America, and they are surging, and we aren't even in a fair fight right now.
They're singularly focused, as you said, on defeating us with strength. Meanwhile, we're worried about whether our military is appropriately representative of all of our recent adoptions of diversity, when the whole point of a military is to be the single greatest killing machine on the face of the planet. To beat ass. That's it.
The whole purpose of a military is to beat ass, and we're worried about what the people beating ass look like. Will Cain, I appreciate the time, and we will talk to you again next week, my man.
All right. Thanks, Clay.
Go sign up for the Will Cain podcast now. Should be able to find it on pretty much anywhere. He's just launched. It's fantastic. Watch him on the weekend on Fox and Friends.